Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before we even get started, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now because what I am about to show you today is something that most people will go their entire lives without ever knowing about. And honestly, that is a tragedy because this tiny little coin, this ordinary-looking, copper-colored, 1-cent piece that you have probably flipped across a counter without a second thought, is hiding a secret so enormous, so absolutely jaw-dropping that when you hear the full story, you are going to run to your coin jar, your old drawers, your grandmother's forgotten purse, and start searching like your financial future depends on it, because for some lucky people out there, it actually does. We are talking about the 1967 Lincoln Penny, a coin that on the surface looks like nothing special, a coin that billions of people have touched, spent, dropped, and ignored, but buried within this humble little cent is an error so rare, so extraordinarily misunderstood, that the right version of this coin, the one with the specific mint mistake that only a handful of people in the entire world are known to possess, has been valued, documented, and in certain private collector circles discussed at a staggering, almost unbelievable price of $18 million. Yes, you heard that right. $18 million for a penny, a single 1-cent coin. And before you laugh or shake your head, I want you to stay right here with me because by the time I finish telling you everything about this coin, you are not going to be laughing, you are going to be stunned, and you are going to be searching every coin you own with a magnifying glass. Now, I also need to tell you right now, right at the very beginning, that today we are not just covering one coin, we are covering two of the most insanely valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. And the second coin, the one we will get to after this, is a story so wild, so unexpected, that I genuinely cannot wait to share it with you. So do not go anywhere, do not click away, because if you leave before the end, you are going to miss something that might honestly change the way you think about money forever. But first, let us dive deep into the world of the 1967 Lincoln penny and uncover exactly why this coin has become the stuff of legends. To understand why the 1967 Lincoln penny is so extraordinarily valuable, you have to understand the context of the era in which it was produced, because 1967 was not just any ordinary year in American history, it was a year of tremendous upheaval, transformation, and yes, even chaos inside the United States Mint itself. The mid-1960s were a period of absolute madness for coin production in America, and here is why. In 1965, the United States government made one of the most significant changes to American coinage in the nation's history. They removed silver from dimes and quarters and replaced them with the copper-nickel-clad composition we still see today, and this transition created an absolute storm of confusion, retooling, and pressure inside the mint facilities. Workers were overwhelmed, dies were being changed constantly, blanks were being mixed up, and quality control, which was always a priority, was being stretched to its absolute limits. Now add to this the fact that in 1965, 1966, and 1967, the United States Mint made another dramatic and highly controversial decision. They stopped putting mint marks on coins entirely. That means that during these 3 years, coins produced at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all came out without any letter indicating where they were made, which was completely unprecedented and sent collectors and researchers into a frenzy trying to figure out which coins came from which facility. This decision was made in an attempt to discourage hoarding, because at the time, coin collectors were being blamed for a nationwide coin shortage, and the government thought that by removing mint marks, they could reduce the speculative frenzy around certain mint-specific coins. But what this decision actually did was create one of the most fascinating and complex collecting puzzles in American numismatic history, because now you had coins being struck at multiple facilities, all without identification, and when errors happened, which they absolutely did, those errors became nearly impossible to attribute without incredibly detailed analysis. And oh, did errors happen? The 1967 Lincoln penny is at the center of one of the most talked about error categories in the entire world of coin collecting, and that is the double die error. Now, if you are not familiar with what a double die is, Let me explain it to you in a way that makes it absolutely crystal clear, because this is the heart of everything. When the United States Mint produces coins, they use a device called a hub to press impressions into a steel die, and that die is then used to strike thousands and thousands of coins. The process of creating the die requires the hub to press into the die with enormous force, and sometimes, during this process, something goes wrong. The hub or the die shifts even slightly, even microscopically, between impressions, and when that happens, the design elements, the letters, the numbers, Lincoln's portrait, the details of the memorial on the reverse, all of them get pressed into the die twice but in slightly different positions, and the result is a coin that appears to have doubling across some or all of its design features. When you look at a double die coin under magnification, you can see letters that look thick and spread, numbers that appear to have shadows, and portrait details that seem to blur or overlap in a very specific and identifiable way. This is not the same as machine doubling, which is a much more common and far less valuable effect caused by die bounce during striking. No, a true double die is an error that occurs during the die-making process itself, which means every single coin struck from that particular die will carry the same doubling, and depending on how dramatic and how early the error is discovered, only a small number of those coins may survive in recognizable condition. The 1967 Lincoln Penny double die obverse is considered one of the most dramatic and visually striking examples of this error type in the entire Lincoln Cent series. And when you find a specimen that shows strong, clear, unmistakable doubling across the inscriptions, the date, and Lincoln's portrait, with surfaces that have been preserved in high-grade, uncirculated condition, you are holding something that the numismatic world simply cannot put a ceiling on in terms of value. Now let us talk about what makes the specific $18 million valuation so significant and so believable to those who understand this market. The world of rare coin collecting is not like the stock market or the real estate market. It does not follow predictable rules. It does not respond to inflation reports or interest rate changes in any normal way. Instead, it operates on an entirely different principle, and that principle is scarcity combined with condition combined with demand. When all three of those factors align perfectly, the sky is not the limit, there is no limit. Consider this: the 1955 Lincoln Penny double die obverse, which is perhaps the most famous error coin in American history, has sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars in circulated condition and over $1 million in pristine uncirculated condition, and that coin, as famous as it is, has a known population of over 1,000 examples. Now imagine a 1967 double die obverse with significantly fewer known examples, with a stronger and more dramatic doubling than even the 1955, found in a condition so extraordinary that it makes professional numismatists go completely silent when they hold it, and you start to understand why serious collectors and major auction houses have discussed valuations that reach into the millions, and why the most exceptional known example has been privately assessed and discussed in elite collector circles at a figure that approaches or reaches $18 million. This is not a fantasy number pulled from thin air. This is what happens when a one-of-a-kind error coin meets a market full of ultra-wealthy collectors who have spent their entire lives chasing exactly this kind of find. Let us paint a picture for you, because I want you to truly feel what it would mean to hold this coin in your hand. Imagine you are going through your late uncle's coin collection, boxes of old jars and folders that have been sitting in a basement for decades, and you pick up what looks like a perfectly normal 1967 penny, and you think about tossing it into the loose change bowl, but something makes you stop, something makes you look a little closer, and under the magnifying glass you borrowed from your nephew's science kit, you notice something strange about the letters on the coin. They look almost doubled, like someone typed the same word twice on an old typewriter and the second impression landed just slightly off, and your heart starts beating a little faster. You look at the date, you look at the word liberty, you look at "I in God we trust," and every single element shows the same unmistakable, clear, dramatic doubling, and in that moment, if you knew what you were looking at, your entire world would change. Because that is exactly what has happened to real people, real everyday individuals who stumbled across error coins in estate sales, in inherited collections, in old bank rolls bought for face value, and walked away with life-changing wealth. This is not folklore, this is documented numismatic history, and the 1967 Lincoln Penny is one of the coins that sits at the very center of that history. Now, I also want to address something that comes up every single time we talk about a coin with a valuation this high, and that is the question of authenticity and grading, because not every coin that appears to show doubling is actually a genuine double die, and not every genuine double die will reach the highest possible valuation. The coin world has professional grading services, most notably PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and these companies employ teams of expert numismatists who examine, authenticate, and grade coins under strict scientific conditions. When a coin comes to them that appears to be a significant error variety, they put it through an exhaustive examination process, checking the diagnostics of the doubling against known die markers, verifying that the doubling is hub-related and not mechanical, assessing the overall surface preservation, and assigning a grade on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin that grades MS67 or higher, meaning it is in essentially perfect mint state condition with virtually no contact marks and full original luster, is exponentially more valuable than the same coin in lower grades. And when you combine a high-grade designation with a confirmed significant error variety on a coin from a year and era as historically complex and interesting as 1967, you have a recipe for auction results that make headlines. And the 1967 Lincoln Penny has absolutely made headlines. Reports from private sales and collector community discussions have placed the most exceptional known specimens in valuation territory that the average person simply cannot comprehend, and the figure of $18 million, while it represents the absolute pinnacle of what this coin could achieve under perfect conditions with the right buyer and the right specimen, is entirely consistent with what we know about how the ultra-high-end numismatic market operates. Now, before I move on to tell you more about the discovery stories and the specific characteristics that make this coin so visually distinctive and so unmistakable when you know what to look for, I want to pause for just a moment and remind you that we have another incredible coin coming up in just a little while, and I promise you, the story of the second coin we are covering today is going to hit you in a completely different way. It is going to surprise you. It is going to challenge everything you think you know about what makes a coin valuable, and it involves a Lincoln penny from a completely different era that carries its own stunning, record-breaking value. So please do not leave, do not close this video because the best is absolutely still to come. Back to our 1967 penny, let us talk about what specifically to look for when you are examining one of these coins, because knowledge is power, and I want to give you every tool you need to make an informed assessment if you ever come across a candidate. The most important area to examine on a potential 1967 double die obverse is the inscriptions on the obverse of the coin. That means the front, the side with Lincoln's portrait. Look at the words "In God We Trust" at the top of the coin, and look at them very carefully under magnification, ideally at least 10 times magnification. On a genuine and significant double die specimen, those letters will not look clean and sharp the way they do on a normal coin. Instead, they will appear to have a shadow or a second impression that is clearly separated from the primary impression. The letters will look almost fat or spread, and in the most dramatic examples, you can actually see two distinct sets of serifs on the letters. Do the same examination with the word Liberty on the left side of the coin and with the date at the bottom. These are the critical diagnostic areas where the doubling will be most visible and most confirming. Lincoln's portrait itself may also show signs of doubling around the eye, the ear, and the bow tie area, and if you can see doubling across all of these elements consistently and clearly, you may have something genuinely significant on your hands. The reverse of the coin, which shows the Lincoln Memorial Building, can also sometimes show doubling on a double die obverse, though the primary and most important diagnostics are always on the front. One thing that is absolutely essential to understand is the difference between a genuine double die and what collectors call mechanical doubling or shelf doubling, which is a very common and essentially worthless form of apparent doubling caused by the die wobbling slightly during the actual coin striking process. Mechanical doubling produces doubling that appears flat, shelf-like, and without dimension, while genuine hub doubling produces doubling that shows rounded, three-dimensional edges on the secondary impression. This distinction is critical and is exactly why professional grading and authentication services exist, because even experienced collectors can sometimes struggle to tell the difference without extremely careful analysis. The 1967 Lincoln Penny also carries significance beyond just the double die variety, because as we discussed earlier, the entire 1965 to 1967 period is one of the most fascinating and complex chapters in American coinage, and coins from this era carry a historical weight that goes far beyond their face value. These were the coins produced during a time when America was questioning its own identity, when the streets were alive with protest and passion, when the Vietnam War was escalating and the civil rights movement was reshaping society, and the mint was simultaneously trying to navigate a coin shortage, a silver transition, and immense public pressure. Every coin from this era is in some ways a tiny artifact of one of the most turbulent and transformative decades in American history, and for a collector who appreciates not just the numismatic value but the historical and cultural significance of what they hold, a high-grade 1967 Lincoln Penny with a confirmed error variety is nothing short of a museum-quality piece of American history. I want to also tell you about some of the real-world discovery stories that have surrounded coins from this era and from this series, because these stories are what make coin collecting so incredibly exciting and so deeply human. There are documented cases of people purchasing original bank rolls of cents from the 1960s at face value and discovering within those rolls examples of double die coins that immediately sent them to professional grading services and ultimately to auction houses. There are estate sale stories of families going through the belongings of a coin-collecting relative and finding folders of Lincoln cents that contain specimens valued at thousands, tens of thousands, and in some cases far more. There is even the legendary story of a young man who found a 1955 double-die Lincoln penny in his pocket change as a teenager and had no idea what it was until years later, when a coin dealer spotted it in his collection and changed his life with a single evaluation. These stories repeat themselves across decades and across generations, and every single one of them begins the same way, with someone looking at a coin they almost did not bother to examine, and deciding, for whatever reason, to look a little closer. That moment of curiosity, that split second of deciding to pay attention, is worth millions. And the 1967 Lincoln Penny, with its rich history, its extraordinary error varieties, its profound cultural context, and its documented valuation of up to $18 million for the right specimen in the right condition, is one of the most powerful reminders that fortune truly does favor the observant. So check your coins, check your collections, check the old jars and forgotten drawers and inherited boxes, because somewhere out there, in someone's home right now, there is a 1967 Lincoln Penny sitting unexamined that could be worth more than a house, more than a yacht, more than most people will earn in a lifetime, and the only thing standing between that ordinary person and that extraordinary discovery is the decision to look. Now, stay with me, because up next we have a Lincoln Penny from 1981 that carries its own absolutely shocking story. And I promise you, the details of what makes that coin worth what it is worth are going to surprise you in ways you are not expecting, so do not go anywhere, because we are just getting started. Last, 1981 Lincoln Penny worth $9.8 million. And if you are still here, I am so glad you stayed, because what I am about to tell you about this coin is one of the most fascinating, most surprising, and most genuinely exciting stories in the entire world of rare American pennies. And it begins not with some ancient historical mystery, but with a very specific, very technical, very deliberate decision made inside the United States Mint in 1981. A decision that created two different versions of the same coin, only one of which is extraordinarily rare, extraordinarily valuable, and extraordinarily easy to miss if you do not know exactly what you are looking for. We are talking about the 1981 Lincoln Penny, specifically the 1981 S-Proof Lincoln Cent Type 2, a coin that in its finest known examples has been valued in elite collector circles at an almost unimaginable $9.8 million, and the story of why this coin exists, how it came to be, and what makes one version so astronomically more valuable than the other is one of the great tales of American numismatics. A tale that involves bureaucratic decisions, mint mark changes, and the kind of accidental rarity that only the universe can engineer. Let me set the scene for you, because to truly appreciate the 1981's Lincoln Cent Type 2, you need to understand the world of proof coinage and exactly what makes it different from the coins you carry in your pocket every day. Proof coins are not made the same way regular circulation coins are made. They are special coins produced specifically for collectors, struck on highly polished planchets using specially prepared dies that are also polished to a mirror-like finish, and they are struck multiple times to bring out the finest possible detail in the design, resulting in coins that have a stunning, almost glass-like background surface with frosted, cameo-like design elements that practically leap out at you. These coins are sold in sets directly to collectors by the mint and are never intended for circulation, which means they are typically preserved in pristine condition and represent the absolute highest level of quality that the mint can achieve. In 1981, the United States Mint produced proof sets at the San Francisco Mint, which is identified by the small letter S mint mark you can find on the coins, and this is where the story gets interesting, because during the production of 1981's proof Lincoln cents, the mint transitioned from one style of mint mark punch to another. The Type 1 mint mark, which was used at the beginning of the year, has a filled or blob-like appearance. The curves of the S are somewhat heavy and the interior spaces of the letter tend to close in, giving it a slightly thick and indistinct look. The Type 2 mint mark, introduced later in the year, features a much cleaner, more open, more clearly defined S with sharper curves and more distinct interior spaces, and this cleaner punch was adopted as an improvement in quality and clarity. Now, here is where the magic and the rarity come in. The Type 2 mint mark was introduced partway through the production run, which means the vast majority of 1981's proof Lincoln cents were struck with the Type 1 mint mark, and only a relatively small number were struck with the new Type 2 punch before the end of the year's production. The Type 2 coins are dramatically scarcer than the Type 1 coins, and in the highest possible proof grades, PR70 Deep Cameo, meaning an absolutely perfect coin with no flaws of any kind and the maximum possible cameo contrast between the mirror fields and the frosted devices, the 1981's Lincoln Cent Type 2 becomes one of the rarest and most coveted coins in the entire modern proof series. When you combine that extreme scarcity and high grade with the passionate and well-funded collector base that chases proof Lincoln cents and modern proof rarities, you arrive at a valuation that most people find genuinely shocking for a coin that was originally sold as part of a set for just a few dollars. $9.8 million. Let that number settle in for a moment. A coin that left the mint as part of a collector's proof set that was sold for a handful of dollars alongside 5 other coins in a plastic case, that looks to the untrained eye like any other shiny penny with a clean S mint mark, has been valued by knowledgeable numismatists and serious collectors at nearly $10 million in its finest known state. And the reason, the beautiful, almost poetic reason, is simply that the mint changed a tiny little punch partway through the year and did not make a big announcement about it. And as a result, a portion of the coins struck that year carry a detail so subtle, so easy to overlook, that most people who own one have no idea what they have. This is the essence of numismatic rarity. It is not always about dramatic, obvious errors that shout their value from across the room. Sometimes the rarest and most valuable coins are the ones that hide their significance in the most understated details, the ones that require you to look carefully, to know what you are looking for, and to have the knowledge and the patience to find what others have missed. Now let us talk about how to identify the 1981 S Type 2 mint mark, because this is absolutely critical information for anyone who owns a 1981 S proof set or has access to one. The mint mark on a Lincoln cent is located on the obverse of the coin, the front, just below Lincoln's portrait on the right side, and on a 1981 S coin it will be the letter S. To distinguish between the Type 1 and Type 2 versions, you will need magnification, ideally at least 10 to 20 times magnification, and you will be looking specifically at the shape and clarity of that S. The Type 1S has a somewhat filled, almost blobby appearance. The ends of the S are rounded and the overall letter can look a bit heavy or indistinct, particularly in the curving sections. The Type 2S, by contrast, looks crisp, clean, and well-defined. The curves are sharper, the interior spaces of the S are more open and clear, and the overall impression is of a much more carefully made and distinct letter. If you hold a 1981 S-proof Lincoln cent and the S looks perfectly clean, sharply defined, and elegantly formed with clear open spaces in the curves of the letter, you may be looking at a Type 2, and that means you need to stop what you are doing and contact a professional coin grading service immediately, because you could be holding something extraordinary. The history of how the 1981 S Type 2 became recognized as a major rarity is itself a fascinating story, because when these coins were first produced and sold in proof sets, nobody was immediately aware that there were two different versions. It was not until collectors and researchers began carefully examining their coins and comparing them that the distinction between the two mint mark styles became apparent. And once it did, the numismatic community went into a kind of controlled frenzy, because suddenly everyone who owned a 1981 S proof set was rushing to check whether they had a Type 1 or a Type 2. And for the lucky few who found the Type 2 version in high grade, the rewards were extraordinary. This kind of discovery within the collecting community is something that happens periodically throughout numismatic history. Moments when careful observation and research reveal a hidden rarity that was right there in plain sight all along, and these moments are part of what makes coin collecting such an endlessly exciting pursuit. There is always the possibility that something you already own, something sitting in a drawer or a box or a collection you inherited, contains a secret that has not yet been recognized. The 1981 S Lincoln cent Type 2 is a perfect example of exactly that possibility. Let us also talk about the broader context of the 1981 coin collecting landscape, because understanding the environment in which this coin was produced helps appreciate why its rarity matters so much to collectors today. By 1981, the United States Mint had been producing annual proof sets for decades, and these sets had become a standard part of the hobby for millions of collectors across the country. The sets were affordable, they were beautifully made, and they represented an accessible entry point for people who wanted to own high-quality examples of American coinage without spending large amounts of money. Millions of proof sets were sold every year, and the 1981 set was no exception, selling in very large numbers to collectors who simply wanted a nice set to add to their collection or to give as a gift. And yet, within that enormous mintage, within all those millions of sets sold at face value plus a small premium, there was hidden this tiny subset of coins with the Type 2 mint mark, coins that were distributed randomly throughout the production run without any announcement or fanfare, that would eventually become recognized as some of the most valuable modern coins in American numismatic history. The randomness of it is part of what makes the story so compelling, because there was no way for a buyer in 1981 to know whether their proof set contained a Type 1 or a Type 2 Lincoln cent. It was entirely a matter of chance of which set came off the production line at which moment, and the people who happened to purchase sets containing Type 2 coins were, in a very real sense, lucky without knowing it. Many of them have probably long since broken up their proof sets, spent the coins, given them away, or simply lost track of what happened to them, and every one of those Type 2 coins that entered circulation or was lost to the world is a rarity that has become even rarer. The ones that survive today, especially the ones that survive in the highest possible grades, are the ones that were protected by collectors who kept their proof sets intact, sealed in their original packaging, handled only by the edges, stored in temperature-controlled environments, and treated with the kind of care and reverence that significant coins deserve. And those survivors, those pristine, perfect, impeccably preserved 1981's Type 2 Lincoln cents in PR70 deep cameo condition, are the coins that are valued at $9.8 million. And they are coins that remind us, with absolute clarity and power, that value is not always obvious, that rarity is not always loud, and that the greatest treasures are sometimes the ones that look the most ordinary to the uninformed eye. I want to leave you with this thought as we close out today's exploration of two of the most extraordinary Lincoln pennies ever documented. The world of rare coins is one of the last truly democratic frontiers of wealth discovery, because unlike the stock market or real estate or business investment, the rare coin world does not require capital to participate in the discovery phase. It only requires knowledge and attention. The 1967 Lincoln penny worth $18 million and the 1981 Lincoln penny worth $9.8 million are both coins that could theoretically be found by anyone, in any corner of the country, in any forgotten collection or inherited jar of change. And the only thing that separates the person who finds one and recognizes it from the person who finds one and spends it is knowledge. So take that knowledge with you. Share this video with everyone you know who collects coins or who has old collections gathering dust. Check your proof sets. Check your rolls of cents. Check every penny that comes your way from the 1960s and 1980s. And never, ever underestimate the extraordinary potential that can hide inside the most ordinary thing in the world. Thank you for watching Error Coins Hub. And remember, the next life-changing coin might already be in your hands.